everybody, what's going on? Larry from Geeking Poetic Podcast here with a brand new segment that I like to call Geeking Toyetic. And we can thank the legendary toy exec Bernie Loomis for that little nugget of a word, by the way. Some of you who've been watching or listening to our podcast surely know by now that I'm a pretty big toy collector and a big toy geek in general. Basically, I'm an overgrown kid whose love for toys just never waned. I even owned a toy and collectible store for a number of years, and somehow or another I actually lived to tell the tale. For a long time now, I've really been wanting to talk more at length about toys, my love of toys, not only like the classic stuff, but even like all the cool new stuff that's been coming out. And trust me, there's a ton of it. So speaking of new stuff hitting the shelves, and also speaking of Kenner, the big talk lately has been about the recent swath of new exclusive Star Wars toys that have been released to stores ever since Star Wars Celebration took place back in April. While there are going to be some other stores and online retailers that are going to be featuring Star Wars exclusive products and stuff, the big buzz has been about the stuff coming out from Target. Target stores seem to be the biggest recipient of Star Wars exclusives, at least for the time being. First of all, they released this cool Han Solo and Stormtrooper disguise, a 3 3/4 inch figure that is part of the newly revamped The Vintage Collection series. As with other figures in this collection, it features the vintage-inspired packaging, and it even has the cool retro Kenner logo that you found in the old 1970s and 1980s toys from the golden days. The figure really is well designed, with at least 25 points of articulation and 2 accessories that come inside the package. His removable Stormtrooper helmet and the E11 blaster, which you gotta have, it's classic. And as of when I'm filming this right now, Target.com does have these available for orders, so if you can't find them on the shelves, make sure you check out the website and order it. That's how I ended up getting mine. All in all, it's a great figure, and it seems like it's not only a little bit of a nod to the old 1970s and 1980s Kenner figures, but it's also a little bit of a nod to the fact that in the 1990s, when they did the Power of the Force reboot of the Star Wars figures, one of the very first exclusives they ever offered was Han Solo in the Stormtrooper disguise. So here we are with yet another exclusive, and so that's kind of cool. I like that it's a throwback to both the old and then the only kind of old. Next up, for the fans of the mostly awesome yet sometimes incredibly frustrating line of figures to collect, is a new addition to the 6-inch Star Wars Black series. Here we have the exclusive to Target 6-inch Luke Skywalker in Stormtrooper disguise Death Star escape figure. This figure, of course, is based on the classic scene where Luke and his pals blast their way down to the trash compactor trying to escape a horde of Stormtroopers that are coming after him. And as such, Luke features the slick back hair and the Stormtrooper uniform that has a bunch of muck all over it from swimming around in trash monster poop for so long. And of course, he also features the removable helmet and the blaster as well, as he well should. He's got good articulation and posability like you've come to expect from a Black Series figure. And he too is currently available on Target.com if you're trying to find one of these. I have not been able to find this one on the shelves at all when I've gone looking for figures, so I ordered this one online. The Han Solo and Stormtrooper outfit reportedly has been a little bit easier to find on the shelves, so you might have more luck with it, but if you just don't want to be bothered, both of these can be found online right now, so don't wait. But the real buzz about town comes with the release of these toys, which, depending on who you ask, are either hotly anticipated or mega despised. Namely, I am talking about the Star Wars Retro Series action figures. These toys are mostly accurate reproductions of the figures that we grew up with back in Star Wars' original heyday. To date, 6 retro figures have been released: Darth Vader, Stormtrooper, Princess Leia, Chewbacca, Luke Skywalker, and Han Solo. So these figures were rather hastily put for sale online on Target.com the very same weekend that they were announced at Toy Fair. In fact, they were actually put up on the website before the Toy Fair announcement had even gone public. And it goes without saying that these figures instantly sold out. So I was fortunate enough to get my order in on time, and I was able to at least get the Luke and the Han. though I still have not gotten the other 4 figures as of now. Those figures will be mine! Anyway, word has it that these are not going to be permanent Target exclusives, and they will be available through other retailers eventually. But as of right now, they are really tough to find. They sell out immediately. While I don't have all 6 figures yet, I've been able to see all 6 of them in person, and I gotta tell you, these figures are awesome. And while some people have been pretty critical and negative towards these things because they just don't like the idea of any of the original toys ever being reproduced and sold again, for fear that it's going to hurt the aftermarket or just damage their sense of nostalgia about these things, honestly, I think they're pretty distinguishable from the originals in a lot of ways, and I don't think people should be too worried about it. First of all, the cards have this definitely distinguishable pseudo-aging that they put around here, where you can see it's supposed to be like an old card, but it's printed on there. I haven't completely made up my mind about it yet. It's kind of charming, as is the retro sticker on here. I don't like that it blocks the picture too much, but they used to do that on the old cards as well with different giveaways and exclusives they had, so I guess it's kind of cool, but I don't know, jury's still out on the packaging for me. The back of the cards, of course, are a completely new design, but they're basically meant to echo the style of the old packages, and I think they look good. The figures themselves definitely differ from the original. They've got distinguishable markings on them, and some of the paint deco, and even the size, is slightly different than the original. So anybody who's a true toy collector should be able to tell immediately that these are different from the originals. And really, folks, if you're not already educated enough on how to tell fakes, repros, or whether a figure's even been touched up or something, then you really ought to do your research and do your homework before you go on eBay or go to a convention or a toy show and start dropping a bunch of money on the originals anyway. So honestly, I don't think these are going to be a problem. But nonetheless, make sure you're able to tell the difference, because there are a lot of scam artists and people out there who are only too happy to take your money away from you if you're not careful. And last but not least, one more cool addition to the whole retro series that I didn't see coming, and I don't think a lot of other people saw coming, was the Escape from Death Star game. Now, I always thought this was a really cool board game as a kid, and while I do think it's super neat to see it again on the shelves, I gotta admit, I did not think this is something they would have automatically chosen to do a repro of. Apparently, Hasbro also knew that they were going to need a little extra gusto to get people excited about this, so they've included a special carded Grand Moff Tarkin retro action figure in here. Now, I'm sure most of you know that there never was a Grand Moff Tarkin action figure in the original toy line. And as a matter of fact, Tarkin didn't even see his likeness turned into a toy until 1995's Power of the Force line was introduced. So this, I think, is pretty cool, because it's the first new addition to what you could call the original retro line of figures since 1985, when they put out the last 17 in the Power of the Force. I always really wanted a Grand Moff Tarkin figure as a kid to play with on the Death Star playset, so this is a pretty big deal for me. And honestly, it's the one figure that I've seen even a lot of the really hard-nosed vintage collectors saying that they're kind of jazzed about, because it does fit in with their old collection and it just looks really cool. I mean, it's something we've wanted for almost 40 years now. So I think it's fair to say that a lot of collectors, old and new, are pretty stoked to include this in their collections. And truthfully, folks, like I mentioned before, I honestly think these retro figures are harmless and they're no threat to your collection or the value of your originals. I figure that these toys are really meant for people who are just more casual collectors, or they're the collectors who like old and they like new, and maybe they just have a more limited budget and they're never going to spend $900 on a carded Luke Skywalker figure, if you can even find one for $900 anymore. I don't have a problem with these in terms of me being a vintage collector, which I am. I think these are fun. I think they're going to be a lot of fun for people to go out and see them on the shelves again. So if you don't like them, don't buy them. All right, everybody, here is where I talk about my Geek Seek of the week, which is a toy that I'm enthusiastic about, that I think you should be enthusiastic about, and you should go and find it for your collection if you don't already have it. This week, since we're talking about Star Wars, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite toys I have, which is the 1980 Star Wars Empire Strikes Back Imperial Cruiser. Now, many of you, I'm sure, are wondering, what's so special about this toy? Well, here's the deal. In 1978, Star Wars came out with the Imperial Troop Transport. I'm sure many of you remember that because it was not movie specific. It was something that they came up with over at Kenner as an extra vehicle that you could put all your troops in and play with. And it had the cool feature with the buttons on top that would play different sounds depending on what button you hit. Even though this toy was not movie specific, it was pretty popular with a lot of us kids back then because it was a lot of fun to play with. But unfortunately, it was a little expensive to make, so it didn't last very long in the line. Sears came along and asked Kenner if they could have something new to feature in their Christmas catalog that year. Now you might be saying, Larry, isn't that the same thing as the Imperial Troop Transport? Yeah, more or less it is, but with a couple of important differences. First and foremost, obviously they changed the name and they gave it some new box art, which I think looks really cool. And they removed that expensive audio feature on there with the buttons. The buttons are still there, but you press them and they don't do anything. Some people might look at that as a downside, but what was cool about it was, since they removed the audio feature on there, it made more room inside the vehicle for storing figures and weapons and droids and all that stuff. I just thought this thing was so much fun to play with. And truth be told, while my buddy David down the block from me as a kid had the Imperial Troop Transport, I never did. I had the Imperial Cruiser. And I've come to find that even amongst a lot of serious collectors, this toy sort of gets overlooked a little bit. Everybody goes for the Imperial Troop Transport, but not a lot of people go for the Cruiser. As such, you can usually find this, if you can find it, for a pretty reasonable price. I got this thing in the box for well under $100. Now, depending on condition and all that kind of stuff, you can pay considerably more than that, but you can get this for a good deal. I see it pretty frequently, and honestly, this is a really cool toy. And even though it doesn't have any distinguishing marks on there to let you know, this is a Sears catalog exclusive. And most of us Star Wars fans know that the exclusives from the catalogs like Sears and JCPenney's and stuff were awesome. So if you're a geek and you're looking for something to seek, I suggest the Empire Strikes Back Imperial Cruiser. Look for it on eBay, look for it at toy shows. It's a really cool toy and it can be had for a reasonable price with the box like mine. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this first installment of Geeking Toyetic. I've had a lot of fun talking about it. Obviously, there's so many toys that I could talk about. There's so much stuff I'm going to cover on here. If you guys have suggestions of toys you'd like me to cover, or you have questions about the toys that I featured, by all means, please post your comments below and I will answer them as quickly as I can. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, follow us on all the platforms. We'd love to hear from you. And when I come back next time, I plan on talking about some Mego stuff, both old and new. And we'll see. I've got some other things up my sleeve that I'll leave as a surprise for now. But I hope to see you all next time. Geeking Poetic, Geeking Toyetic, Larry out. Happy hunting.